Welcome in, everybody. This is Red Corner, Blue Corner, right here on Stadium. I'm joined by my guy, Jake Butt, former Michigan tight end, All-American, Mackey Award winner, and all-around great guy from Central Ohio.
Also all-around great guy, Joshua Perry, captain, national champion, great analyst. We got some good stuff today, brother.
Yeah, we got some good topics coming up, and we want everybody to be a part of it. So I want you to scan that QR code on the screen and vote on today's poll. Where does Ryan Day rank among Big Ten coaches? And, of course, we got the chat popping on YouTube. You need to get in there, give us your comments. We'll let them roll throughout the show. Now, I want to go back to last week, Thursday's show, where we picked games, and our fan picker, Sam Brief, my goodness, perfect. 5-0 on the week. I was 3-2, not my best work, but Jake, you were under 500, so you need to apologize to the people.
Yeah, I would definitely like to apologize. Hopefully no one trailed me and bet on my picks, but I will say this. I committed my number one sin. I violated my number one cardinal rule. You can overthink things, right? You can convince, just trust a little bit. I overthought things, and I paid the price.
I did a little bit of that, too.
Yeah.
I did just a little bit of it, and clearly Sam didn't. I mean, that man was on point.
Sam's onto something.
Yeah, congratulations to him.
Good job, Sam.
You wanna get us into our first conversation of the day?
I think we should, and this is one that I'm excited to ask you about because, of course, we both picked Ohio State to win Maryland, as did Sam, as did a lot of people. And with that became win number 50 for Ryan Day, and reached that mark just 56 games, so that's a good win percentage. Second fastest coach to ever reach 50 wins, so also really good. And yet all that said, Joshua, because of the Buckeyes' first half struggles versus Maryland, and really I don't think it was just this week against Maryland, but fans are still questioning Ryan Day. Is that fair, or does Ryan Day deserve more respect?
I think both, right? Like, this is a hell of a feat. I was there when Urban Meyer did the 50 wins. I was a part of each one of those wins. We went 50-4 in a 4-year span. It was a great brand of football, something that was unheard of at the time. We only won a singular national championship out of that in probably all 4 years we were competitive. Now, we had a bowl ban my freshman year, but my sophomore year, we dropped the ball. My senior year, we dropped the ball. Thank you, Michigan State, for that. Great teams I played against over there from East Lansing. And so now we get now we get Ryan Day, 50-6. And I think the consternation comes because 2 of those 6 losses were against Michigan.
Right.
If he wins those 2 games, he'd have, pretty much a better record than Urban Meyer at that point, right? So as I look at this thing for Ryan Day, it's not, I think people's frustration isn't necessarily about him and the job that he's doing coaching, because you can look at his record and say that he's been phenomenal. I think it's the fact that people believe that both Penn State and specifically Michigan have caught up to the level of Ohio State. Those teams are now national title contenders. When I was playing at Ohio State, they were not. And the idea that your stronghold over that is slipping away, to me, is causing people to have this reaction. But the question I would ask you is, through the 2 losses to Michigan, are you any further away from a national title than you were before? Because I would make the argument that you were almost as close as you have ever been last year, where you were a field goal away from beating Georgia. Last year, where you had multiple 2-score leads in that semifinal game, right? So to me, I think we should be critical. Being in Columbus is a hard thing to do. Being the head coach at Ohio State is not an easy job. It's not for everybody. But we should also have a little bit of damn sense about the way we talk about this guy. I heard people writing articles about firing Ryan Day.
Yeah.
All right, I mean, who are you going to go get that's better? You tell me that. Who are you going to get that you're guaranteed to beat Michigan and be in the same spot at the end of the year competing for a title? And I don't think there's a good answer to that question.
Yeah, be careful what you wish for. There's a lot more room to go down than there is to go up in Columbus. You mentioned a key point here. It's the gap was pretty large between Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. That gap has been closed. And you said it, much of that is to the credit of Michigan in particular in closing that gap and, of course, now beating Ohio State the past 2 years. But the truth is, in Columbus, you're judged off of 2 things. Can you win a national title? And you see with the 3 college football playoff berths, they've been right there. Really probably would have won. They're a few plays away from winning it last year. I think they would have beat TCU. The other piece is, do you beat your rival? And that's, as you mentioned, the key here. They have not beat Michigan. This is where the context matters because, okay, you lose to Michigan in Ann Arbor a few years ago. They say, hey, all right, we got Michigan at home next year. Well, then you lose again to Michigan and kind of got run off the field in the fourth quarter.
Not kind of. They got run off the field.
But what ends up happening is this whole offseason, there was a conversation around, like there was a sense of urgency in Columbus to say, all right, we need to see some big-time strides, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. Okay, the defense has answered the bell. But in Columbus, what you're not used to seeing is the lackluster offensive performances at times to start the season. And the context, again, matters because no one in college football has more resources than Ohio State. You just match it. They have as much as you can possibly have. No one or very few has recruited as well as Ohio State. So I think some of the frustration comes from really here is to say, well, why aren't we seeing those results? We're close, but close doesn't matter in Columbus. What needs to be done to get over the hump?
Yeah, it's a great question, but like you talk about resources, I would say that Georgia probably matches resources, Alabama's match resources, and both of those teams have recruited better than Ohio State, two of the only programs that have, and they're the teams that are winning the title. So like, I guess what I'm trying to get at is if we're judging on can you win a ring, you're going to be disappointed in most years because only one team gets to do that. Can you beat your rival? I understand that, but it still does not take you any further from your ability to get the ring. And again, the question becomes at that point, who are you going to get that is guaranteed to be better when you start having the conversation about getting rid of Ryan Day? I think it is an intriguing thing, and I think people are valid to criticize him. But I also think there is nobody that is more criticized for beating a conference opponent by 20 points, which Ryan Day has done twice this year, than Ryan Day himself.
Are you further? I would just say, I mean, the defense has taken strides, but I wonder, has the offense taken equal, if not more, steps back to what we're used to? So as a team, are they further away or closer? Michigan has taken strides. So the context of it is you're judged against Michigan. If they're taking strides and you're not matching it, and you've already lost 2 years in a row, there's some of your concerns right here, Joshua.
No, I'm totally there with you. And this is why I think this year against Michigan is really important. They got a game against Penn State coming up in a couple of weeks. That's going to be really important. They got the first big one out of the way in Notre Dame, so we'll see what happens from there. But it is one of the more intriguing things to watch how people talk about the head coach there in Columbus. We're going to transition elsewhere in the Big Ten. We saw some good wins from Wisconsin, Iowa, and Nebraska as we get some clarity in the Big Ten West. So, simple question for you. Who is the top team in that division?
Okay, so I'm looking at it, and I'm saying I'm going to go with the Badgers here.
Okay.
The key word is top team, because it's hard for me to pick against Phil Parker and Iowa's defense, right? I'd put them up there with anybody in the conference. Wisconsin's got a good defense, not good enough. But when you think about the team, it's the net overall. And I mean, look, Iowa won a game last week with what, 6 completions?
Yeah.
They punted for more yards than they put up on offense. I trust Wisconsin's offense to make up some of that gap. So I'm picking Wisconsin there. My only concern is they play each other this weekend.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll get this question answered. If in the meetings with Tanner Mordecai, you say, Tanner, the only way we lose this game this week is if you turn the ball over. Well, that's been his issue all season. So we'll get some clarity, but Mordecai cannot have the errant turnovers that he's had.
Yeah, the clarity is key. And I think that if Iowa gets this win, obviously, they're going to be in the driver's seat. I start to look at the remaining schedules in your Iowa. You got Wisconsin, you got Minnesota, Northwestern, Rutgers, Illinois, Nebraska. It seems like a pretty good draw there.
Yeah.
Wisconsin still has Ohio State out there on their schedule, which is going to make it tough when you start talking about conference records there. But here's the biggest thing for me is Iowa might be a team for the season that averages 21 points a game. I'm fully willing to acknowledge that. They went this last game, 6 completions. That was 29% for Deacon Hill. Yeah. He threw 5 passes to his tight end, 1 pass to his running back, didn't complete a damn ball to any of the wide receivers out there. It's wild to consider, but they have a formula, they have a plan. Their defense comes through, their special teams comes through, and ultimately I think that the teams that are left on their schedule are too flawed in terms of not being patient and not making mistakes that Iowa's going to be able to potentially run the table. And this is the craziest part about it when you really start to boil it down, is they could have one of the worst offenses in America, and they could finish 11-1.
Look, we ask, how long can Iowa keep winning games like this? How do they? Well, they just keep winning games like this. And as you mentioned, the schedule, Iowa's already got the 1 loss. This is a huge game for Wisconsin. You need to remain undefeated in conference play and give your closest rival, Iowa, a 2nd loss. So it's a big game.
Yeah, it's going to be a huge one. I'm excited to watch it here. I think this would be, to your point, for Tanner Mordecai to go out there, and if he can have a clean game against an Iowa defense, I think this does a lot for that football team. On the flip side, if Iowa can start that avalanche early, take the football away a couple of times, really flip the field position, and make Wisconsin have to struggle, it's going to be a toughie.
We got a comment here, Joshua. So look at Mark Carmen's calling in. He says, I feel like Wisconsin-Iowa this week is the Big Ten West championship game. Fair enough?
I think it's fair.
Gotta be.
Right? Like, I mean, as we look at the other teams over there in the West, we saw Minnesota, and they're a banged-up team. Playing against Michigan last week, their quarterback's got some issues. We saw what Purdue did, and they tried to make it closer toward the end, but they couldn't get it done. We got another comment in here is Baseball Man 1019. Who's the guy talking about Iowa? He don't know nothing about no Iowa.
I think we all know
I
exactly who Iowa is at this point.
Well, I gave them the stats, too. 29% completion, 6 balls, 5 went to the tight end, 1 went to the running back, and none went to the wide receiver.
It's been the formula for a while now.
Who dropped about 6 balls the week before against Michigan State. That's neither here nor there. All right, we're going to take a break right here on Red Corner, Blue Corner. But coming up, Michigan defense has proven to be one of the top units in the country. But is there a knock against the Wolverines? That's in just a few. And be sure to stick around for Inside the Association at the top of the hour. Our crew has the latest from the NBA as Victor Wembanyama gets set for his preseason debut tonight. Keep it locked in right here on Stadium.